has now been thoroughly debunked because to date, there's zero evidence. It is now time for Republicans to rally around the president and get to the work of fulfilling the promises they made to you, the American people. Let's move forward. That's tonight's opening monologue. All right, so for 11 months, we have been seeing nonstop Russia-Trump collusion hysteria coming from the black helicopter, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, all who want to destroy Trump, especially in the media like Rachel Maddow and her friends over at NBC and CNN. They are completely unhinged, and they are deranged, and so are the Democrats. And while some on the left continue to peddle this conspiracy, it is now kind of becoming so ridiculous that even Democrats are saying, uh-oh, Georgia 6, enough is enough. Let's take a look.
I think Robert Costa is right. The fact that we have spent so much time talking about Russia has been a distraction from what should be the clear contrast between Democrats and the Trump agenda.
People in Ohio, Don, aren't really talking about Russia or Michael Flynn or Putin or anything else. They're worried about paying the bills, what's happening with our pension, how much does it cost to send a kid to school, what's our energy bill, like real bread and butter stuff. And when we're talking about Trump so much, we're not talking about them.
All right, for those on the left who are still holding out hope and praying upon prayer on their knees that they will somehow be proven right about Trump-Russia collusion, well, they should take a look at this exchange between Congressman Trey Gowdy and former Obama DHS Secretary Jay Johnson from yesterday, because it's not going to help their optimism. Take a look.
You have seen no evidence that the Russians were successful at changing voter tallies or voter totals.
Correct.
At the time you separated from service in January of 2017, had you seen any evidence that Donald Trump or any member of his campaign colluded, conspired, or coordinated with the Russians?
Not beyond what has been out there open source, and not beyond anything that I'm sure this committee has already seen and heard before directly from the intelligence community.
All right, now, Johnson, he's just the latest now in a long list of former Obama officials to say the exact same thing, that they have not seen any evidence whatsoever of Trump-Russia collusion. And by the way, vote tallies were not changed in the November election. Oh, and by the way, Johnson also testified that the DNC, they rejected help from the DHS after it was allegedly hacked last summer. Now, why would they do that? Remember, the DNC also blocked the FBI from having access to their servers. Maybe the Destroy Trump media, maybe they should start asking questions. What was it they didn't want the FBI and the DHS to see? And then earlier today, President Trump on Twitter, he said that he does not have any tapes of James Comey. Now, I got to tell you, the media will spin it otherwise. This was a brilliant and important move by the president. He knows that in the world of this deep state, and it's true, anybody can be surveilled. We have talked about that a lot. And by saying what he said, the president put doubt in James Comey's mind, and more importantly, kept Comey honest, because we now know that Comey is nothing more than an angry and disgruntled employee who actually admitted he leaked to get a special counsel. And by the way, and speaking of the special counsel, it is time to focus on Robert Mueller. He must recuse himself. And the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, he must recuse himself. Remember, Mueller was hired to investigate the possible Russia collusion with the Trump campaign, but then he made it about obstruction because there was no evidence on that. And now he's focusing on finances. I call it mission creep, investigative creep. And then we have to ask the obvious question. Is Mueller carrying out some political witch hunt for his BFF, James Comey? We've been explaining for weeks now, Mueller has massive conflicts of interest. And by the way, the same goes for Rosenstein. He's the guy who recommended to the president James Comey be fired, and then appointed Mueller to serve as a special counsel, giving him free range to engage in investigation mission creep. Now, both Mueller and Rosenstein need to recuse themselves, resign, get out of the way. Guess what? We already know the answer about Trump-Russia collusion. And also, we can't forget about Loretta Lynch. Why aren't they investigating her? Or Hillary Clinton? If Washington, if the Department of Justice, if in fact the FBI, if they care even a little bit about real, actual criminal activity, then both parties now should call for an investigation into the former Attorney General who influenced James Comey's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server scandal. By the way, remember the tarmac meeting? Remember, oh, it's not an investigation, it's an issue, whatever she called it. And by the way, they should do an extensive investigation into the Uranium One deal, 20% of our foundational material for nuclear weapons. Hillary Clinton signs a waiver. It goes to Vladimir Putin. Her foundation gets millions of dollars kicked back. Now, President Trump is also weighing in on Robert Mueller. He spoke with Fox and Friends co-host Ainsley Earhardt earlier tonight. By the way, the full interview will air tomorrow morning. But here's what he told Ainsley about the Russia investigation. Let's take a look.
Robert Mueller, do you think he should recuse himself from this? Because he is good friends with James Comey. He's hired some attorneys that were part of Hillary Clinton's foundation, have given money to President Obama and Hillary Clinton's campaign. Should he recuse himself?
Well, he's very, very good friends with Comey, which is very bothersome. But he's also, we're going to have to see. I mean, we're going to have to see in terms, look, there has been no obstruction. There has been no collusion. There has been leaking by Comey, but there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that. So we'll have to see. I can say that the people that have been hired are all Hillary Clinton supporters.
All right, so now that the hysteria and the hyperventilation about Trump-Russia collusion is now dying down, okay, now it's time to refocus, and that's on the president, his campaign promises, his agenda to help those Americans that are suffering. Now, the president also reacted to Senate Republicans releasing their health care bill in his interview with Ainsley. Let's take a look.
You have the White House, you have the House, Republicans have the House and the Senate, but you have these senators that are not on board.
Well, there are also four good guys and they're four friends of mine, and I think that they'll probably get there. We'll have to see. You know, healthcare is a very difficult situation. If you look, the Clintons tried to get it, and after years and years, they couldn't do it. Obamacare was murder for them to get. And now it's failed. It's virtually out of business. Obamacare is a disaster, and we're trying to do something in a very short period of time.
Now, Ainsley also got a chance to speak with the First Lady, Melania Trump, and here's what she had to say about now moving into the White House.
Congratulations, you moved into the White House. How is it?
We are enjoying it very much.
How about Barron with school? Is he settled?
He loves it, yes.
He does?
All settled. He loves it here.
Good. Are you missing New York?
Not really. I'm so busy, and we're doing so many great stuff, so it's a really special place.
All right, so despite all these distractions from the left, the president, he's laid out a bold, aggressive agenda for the country. Now, we're putting it up on the side of the screen. Now, these are the things that you, the American people, voted for, that the media and, of course, the deep state doesn't want to see accomplished. Tonight, it's time for Republicans in Congress to get back to work. And here's what needs to be done if Republicans want to be successful and earn your vote in 2018. One, they've got to continue work towards passing, albeit an imperfect plan, to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's got to get done. It's a good first start. Now, also, I place the blame on this squarely on the shoulders. There are 100 liberal Republicans in the House, and there are weak senators. They never, ever intended to really repeal and replace Obamacare the right way. But putting that aside, they still need to get this deal done. And like the president said, there will be room for negotiation and improvement down the road. Number two, it's so important that the men and women, the forgotten men and women of this election, who won this election for the president. Now, for example, in the states, the Obama administration, look at the side of the screen there. Republican lawmakers, they need to remember that all those men and women left behind during Obama's 8 disastrous years, it's time to get back and focus on them. Get people back to work. That means get people out of poverty, off of government assistance and food stamps. And another important thing is, well, the president already accomplished this, keeping the promise to appoint an originalist to the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch. That's going to be a big help. A massive victory for the president and another kept promise. And by the way, the next most important item agenda, we better move towards energy independence. It will create millions of high-paying jobs for Americans. It'll lower energy prices, the lifeblood of our economy. It will be great for national security. We're not relying on countries who hate our guts. Also, the president, Republicans, they've got to build this border wall. It was a key promise of the president. I'd like to see at least 300 miles built and completed by November 2018. Also, the president, he's an absolute genius. He's putting solar panels on the border wall. So much for that talking point that Republicans want dirty air and dirty water, and they only care about, dirty energy. If Republicans can accomplish those 5 items, then they can focus solely on tax reform, 15% corporate tax, middle-class tax cut, repatriation, trillions of dollars from multinational corporations at a low rate so we can build factories and manufacturing centers. If Republicans can pass a strong tax plan, a reform plan, then we're going to see economic growth, economic explosion. And by the way, like what happened during the Reagan administration, like what happened when we balanced the budget when Newt Gingrich was Speaker. If this gets done, it'll drown out all of the noise coming from the destroy Trump media, the conspiracy theorists, and even the deep state that are leaking selectively on the president every day. And by the way, probably end all that insane talk about impeachment. And by the way, it will also benefit the weak, timid Republicans in the House and Senate. They need to show some backbone. Here with reaction, author of now the #1 New York Times best-selling book in the country, Understanding Trump, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, another #1 New York Times bestseller. Congratulations. I think this is one of your best books by far.
I'm very excited by it, and I think we've gotten a great reaction so far. I was in the White House today giving out copies of this and getting really a very positive reaction to the whole concept. I think you're basically right about the core reality. If they can pass the right kind of tax cut, and if they can really generate the level of job creation comparable to, say, Reagan, this is all going to become a tremendous victory in 18 and in 20. And I think that they've got to focus in on creating a very big, very deep tax cut. I think that one of the ways to do that is to focus on making it deficit neutral, not revenue neutral. And the difference is a revenue neutral bill has to pay for itself inside the tax code. A tax cut built on a deficit model, which is what we did in 1997, actually uses savings around all the government, savings in reforms, getting rid of certain government surplus properties. All these things are brought in, and that income stream then offsets part of the tax cut. So you get a much bigger tax cut. And I'm hoping that Republicans will go down the road of a very bold, very exciting, and dramatically lower tax base.
You know, I want to go back to this issue of what the president did when remember he tweeted out, he goes, James Comey, I hope you don't lie, that there may be tapes. And the media all assumed, oh my gosh, did the president tape them? Where are the tapes? We need those tapes. And I've known this president now for over a couple of decades. I knew instantly he didn't tape James Comey. I knew it. And I've said it on the air, said it on my radio show. And what he was doing is he was casting doubt in Comey's mind, and I think it had a very profound effect because Comey was more bitter than I think Americans knew, as we now know from leaking for the purpose of getting a special counsel. And in the back of his mind, he had to think, what if there are tapes? And he had to be more honest. But everybody could be, you know, recorded in this time and era of the deep state under surveillance, right?
Sure. Or for that matter, in an age when people have iPhones and smartphones that they can simply tape on their own phone. One of the things I describe in Understanding Trump is this is a guy who automatically pushes back. One of the reasons he does so well with blue-collar workers is they identify with that kind of toughness. So Comey was shoving him. His immediate instinct is to shove back and to say, well, you know, you better be very careful after all. What if you're on tape? And I agree with you. I think that all of a sudden Comey had to take a deep breath and stop and think, well, maybe I'd better not exaggerate as much as I planned to. And I never thought he had taped it either. But the press, of course, went crazy. The news media gets up every morning and goes, I'm going to go crazy about something Trump did today. I wonder what it is. And they're constantly looking for junk. When, as we saw in the special elections, and Trump was actually right, he went back to Pompeo's seat in California. We're 5-0 competing with the Democrats in special elections. And I think that's because all this Washington noise, the American people just reject it. They don't pay attention to it. They refuse to believe in it. I do want to say, though, as a former member of the House, that I know that there are some Democrats who, having lost 5 in a row, are thinking of dumping Nancy Pelosi. I just want to say, I hope Nancy stays for at least a decade. I think that she is so helpful to us that I really think it would be sad.
You know,
we'd have to develop a whole new campaign plan.
Listen, all right. We agree on a lot of things. I totally agree with you. And I don't want to see Chuck Schumer leave either. I think they need to stay exactly where they are. Although, why do I believe that the left would probably even find somebody more extreme than her? So we got to be careful what we wish for here. I want to stay on these tape issues for just a second and some of the revelations that came out with Jay Johnson yesterday, because I thought they were interesting. You know, there's no evidence of collusion. Trump-Russia. He goes into that. Then he talks about no votes were impacted. And then he testified about, on the issue, why didn't the Democrats take the offer from the DHS? Why didn't they turn their computers over to the FBI? To me, there had to be something that they were hiding. Why did the FBI allow them to get away with that? Doesn't that raise a lot of questions in your mind?
Sure it does. And by the way, Jay Johnson's a very smart, very competent person. And I actually sent him an email yesterday after his testimony and said, very impressive testimony. You know, he came in there, and you and I, frankly, should probably have been smart enough back in January when this first came up to say, wait a second, does anybody really believe that the Obama intelligence system, the Obama Homeland Security system, and the Obama FBI system were so stupid that for 6 months the Russians were doing things and they didn't notice it? And, of course, that's part of what Jay is saying. He's saying, wait a second, I was in charge. None of this happened. Now, I think what that does is it really punctures the Russian balloon and makes it trivial. And here's the problem with Miller.
By the way, Mr. Speaker, if I worked for President Trump and his campaign, and I thought the Russians had information that would expose Hillary for being a liar, and I said, can you release that? Is that a crime?
It's not a crime, but you wouldn't have said it directly to the Russians. I mean, all you had to do is say it on television.
I don't have contact with them.
Right. I mean,
yeah, I would have said it on television. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, you just say on television, gosh, if they have anything, feel free to let it go. You have to assume the Russian ambassador has people who watch TV. But here's the deeper point I want to get to for a second. You watch. As the Russian stuff collapses, Mueller is going to shift to other topics. Now, that wasn't, supposedly he was appointed precisely to go after the Russian question. And what we're going to discover is, oh, no. They're now going to go after other people. I think that
they already are.
I hope the House and Senate Judiciary Committees are both going to ask Mueller to come in and explain who he's hiring, why he's hiring professional Democrats, why he's hiring headhunters. They don't have to get into the details of the investigation. They just need to get into the details of who he's hiring.
Yeah, we got to go, Mr. Speaker. I want to say one last time. Number one, New York Times, congratulations. You deserve it. The book's phenomenal. Understanding Trump, Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere, Hannity.com. And when we come back, more reaction to the president's tweets about the alleged Comey tapes. Stroke of genius. The president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, he'll join us next with reaction. And later, yes, Liberal Morning Joe, host, literally criticizing the president's comments that he made at a rally last night. I have advice for this unhinged couple before they have a full emotional breakdown. And we'll get reaction to one and only Ann Coulter's here. Also, set your alarm. You want to wake up early. Catch Ainsley Earhart's full interview with the president and the First Lady, Melania Trump, on Fox and Friends tomorrow. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today, the president took to answer one of the propaganda media's most pressing concerns, writing, quote, with all of the recently reported electronic surveillance intercepts, unmasking, and illegal leaking of information, I have no idea whether there are tapes or recordings of my conversations with James Comey, but I did not make and do not have any such recordings. Joining us now with reaction, the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. He's also an attorney for the president. Jay Sekulow is with us. I'm sorry. This was one of the most brilliant, strategic, doubt-inducing, mind-messing tweets in the history of mankind, because he basically said to Comey, well, if there's tapes, you're in trouble. But with the deep state, it was also a nice shot at them.
Well, look, there's nothing in that tweet is 100% accurate, obviously. And look at the result. This is a president that has been able to utilize social media platforms in ways that are going down in the history book. So it's interesting today. I'm hearing the left saying this tweet compelled James Comey to tell the truth. Well, why is that a bad thing? So James Comey, the only thing we know about James Comey for sure in this investigation is that he's a leaker and that he did tell the truth. Now we know that about the situation with was the president under investigation when he said no, he wasn't. So
you see,
the reality is
we didn't know. We didn't know at the time that he was so bitter. We didn't know he leaked to the New York Times at the time. No. And with a stroke of genius, even if there was only 1% doubt in the mind of Comey had to talk about, oh, Trump encouraged the investigation. Nobody tried to obstruct the investigation. He even wanted to know if people around him may have colluded with the Russians.
You know, in fact, if you look at that NBC interview with Lester Holt, the president states in the full context of that interview that if, in fact, he were to removing the FBI director, he knew that was going to extend quite possibly the Russian investigation. So that also cuts against that.
This is important. It would extend it. So he knew that it would likely go longer, but he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do.
The best interests of the country. But, Sean, I want to go back to the tweet for a moment. You had this, the reaction I've seen today from those on the left saying, what was really at stake here? What was really at play? This compelled James Comey to, and as I said, fill in the blank, tell the truth. So he told the truth. That's not an illegal act, getting someone, by the way, to tell the truth. It wasn't interfering with anything. You know what it was? It was the president stating what everybody knows. With all of the intercepts, with all of the intelligence unmasking, with all of the leaking, and who now do we know is the leaker in chief? It's been James Comey. James Comey, the one thing we know so far is James Comey leaked a private conversation he had with the President of the United States to a friend to leak it to the New York Times. That's the only evidence we have of anything, and that is what the crime is, what James Comey did.
End the investigation. This is now a witch hunt.
Yeah,
and listen, I'm going to tell you right now, Mueller needs to get out. The conflicts of interest are massive. He needs to go. Rosenstein, go. The investigation ended. And I'm going to be hitting this harder as the week unfolds.
I understand.
Tomorrow.
Let me tell you how that's handled, though. There's a process upon which, as the lawyers for the president, you engage in when you have these issues. We are engaging that process as any good lawyer would do in representing their client.
Yeah,
but what happened today?
He's hiring Hillary's lawyer, hiring Obama and Hillary donors. What is this?
Yeah, well,
this
look,
is beyond.
every one of these issues these issues you've raised are legitimate issues that have to be raised with the special counsel. But let me go back to the very fundamental aspect of this. What is the violation of the law upon which a special counsel has been implemented in the first place? That's what everybody should be asking. It's a distraction for the United States. There's no basis of law upon which this should have been entered into in the first place. And the reality is, at the end of the day, what did we find out today? What did we find out today? We know one thing still. James Comey was the leaker. That's what we know.
All right, Jay Sekulow, thank you. When we come back, liberal Morning Joe, his fiancée Mika attacking the president yet again in another unhinged moment. They seem to be having emotional breakdowns quite often on the air. I'm offering them some advice and free help, and we'll get reaction from Ann Coulter. Also later, a growing number of Democrats saying time for Nancy Pelosi to step down. I'll explain why that is a very bad idea. Stand with Nancy. Lou Dobbs joins us. Welcome back to Hannity. So Liberal Morning Joe and his fiancée, they are at it again. This time NBC's Morning Dose of Hate is now bashing President Trump over something that he said at his rally last night in Iowa. Now tonight we're going to examine their latest emotional breakdown and give the newly engaged hosts, Joe and Mika, some very important help and advice. That's our mini monologue tonight. All right, so during last night's rally, President Trump, he touted the abilities of his chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, and his Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross. Now, these are two men who have garnered tremendous success in the private sector before literally leaving behind millions to serve the public. Watch this.
So somebody said, why did you appoint a rich person to be in charge of the economy? I said, no, it's true. I said, because that's the kind of thinking we want. I mean, you know, really, because they're representing the country. These are people that are great, brilliant business minds, and that's what we need. That's what we have to have. I love all people, rich or poor. But in those particular positions, I just don't want a poor person. Does that make sense?
All right, but of course the liberals over at Liberal Joe, they didn't agree with the president's comments. Yes, watch this.
2017, blessed are the poor.
It's amazing. Any other person in politics who would say something like that would like have their career crushed. And Donald Trump's just gonna like skate by it.
Wow.
Oh my God. Yeah. Are you speechless?
I am.
Okay.
I really am.
Or is this just not?
Yeah, there's just something a little bit twisted about that. That's twisted in a way that's hard to dissect.
Maybe progress. They didn't call him a schmuck today. But anyway, what are they talking about? In all my years in construction, the restaurant business, I never got a job from a poor person, not one time. In fact, successful entrepreneurs and economic geniuses who spend their lives in the private sector, they understand the economy, they know how to make it thrive, and that benefits all of us. And in my opinion, if a man or a woman are willing to forego millions and millions and millions of dollars that they'd put in their pocket to serve their country, to help create jobs for people out of work, in poverty, on food stamps, well, you know what? I think that's a good service for the country. And sadly, it's only the latest example of, well, Liberal Joe and Mika melting down over President Trump. Now, take a look at the wide range of emotions that they show on a regular basis.
Donald Trump, again, being a schmuck. He looked like a thug. He looked like a goon. You look at the handshake. You look at this. Just what a thug.
You got to stop putting Kellyanne on the air. It's politics porn.
We're totally unprepared for the job of being president, unfortunately, not knowing what he does not know.
And possibly unfit mentally. Sorry.
It would be like somebody pooping their pants and then people looking at it and saying, oh, that's modern art. Don't you understand? I am making a statement against Russian aggression.
This is not funny. This is really bad. Just for the record, we're all really nervous.
All right, with all these emotional breakdowns, all this anger towards the president, I'm actually getting worried about Mika and Liberal Joe. You see, America's favorite couple that nobody watches, well, it's just kind of, they're starting out their lives together, and I want them to be successful. I even tweeted out congratulations on their engagement. It seems the stress of the Trump presidency now is really beginning to drag them down, and I'm beginning to see way too many emotional breakdowns every day. I even heard a rumor that they've been very distraught, and they weren't even able to see President Trump look-alike get killed during a Shakespeare play in the park with their blankie and, of course, their picnic basket and their champagne and caviar. All right, so Liberal Joe, Mika, if you're watching tonight, I want you to know, I am willing to pay out of my pocket, out of love and sympathy, for therapy for a year so your new beautiful relationship can thrive in the Trump era and that emotionally you'll be stronger and able to cope in these difficult times for you. Joining us now, author of the bestseller, In Trump We Trust, Ann Coulter. Now, the reason I wanted you for this, because you're the only conservative friend that I have that actually watches that garbage. I don't know why, but you do.
Actually, I don't get up early enough to watch Morning Joe. So thank you for showing that to me. I think that's really helpful for Trump, this smirking, eye-rolling, really kind of bitchy attacks on him. I mean, it warms your heart toward the president. I think that's probably helping him.
I watched the rally like you did, and it's interesting when he gets out of the D.C. bubble and he goes to the American people, they support his agenda. The broader points, the things that you loved about him from day one and I supported from day one. Let's move on to something. You wrote a great column, and I want to make sure I get this in. You said, the left has one more argument in them. Kill them. And I thought it was a very powerful, strong piece.
Thank you. Well, I had to cut it down by about 2/3 because there were so many examples of leftist violence over the years, which has been stepped up massively since Donald Trump came on the scene. But I've just been, sort of stunned after the second Bernie Sanders supporter in the last month to either commit mass murder or attempt to commit mass murder, that the response through the media is that, well, Donald Trump, he shares some of the blame for he called Hillary crooked Hillary. Well, for one thing, give me a break. Crooked Hillary, you can't call a rival politician a crook, a liar. Go back to look at the things Harry Truman said. Go back to, colonial times and what politicians accuse one another of. But more importantly, look at the audiences listening to this. You can go back centuries. Violence in this country has always come from the political left. I mean, political violence has. Some presidential assassinations, for example, the guy just thought he was the king of England, and William McKinley had cheated him or something. But of the political assassination or presidential assassination attempts, it's all come from the political left. We had Al Sharpton in the 1990s. He gives a speech outside Freddy's. Guy runs into the store and kills 7 people. I think it was the next day or 2 days later. Al Sharpton speaks at, what was it, Cato Gavin's funeral out in Crown Heights. And, you know, there are mobs raging through, and 2 people are killed. The anti-Donald Trump hate map that VDARE, an immigration restrictionist website, has put up, it's stunning. It's a map of the United States, and you click on bubbles, and you can get the police report and the news articles about it, and I've linked to it. But we're talking about blood and violence against Trump supporters. They have one thing, that guy at Comet Pizza.
I'm ready. And you know what? Obama, Hillary, no top Democrat, the ISIS pose, severed head, president, not a peep out of them.
Right, when they're going to call the president Hitler, fascist, bigot, white supremacist, they are ginning up people who are obviously, some segment of the liberal audience is mentally unbalanced and do have homicidal rages, and the respectable left is intentionally ginning up the psychotic left. That's what we are seeing. No, both sides.
Right. Ann Coulter, great column, and we love having you on. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come back, growing calls for Democrats, Nancy Pelosi to step down as the House Minority Leader. I say stand with Nancy tonight. We don't want her to leave. I'll explain. We'll get reaction from Lou Dobbs, and later, the Health and Human Services Secretary, Tom Price, is here. Welcome back to Hannity. So the Democrats, they have lost all 4 House special elections, and in the wake of this week's devastating defeats, some Democrats are saying it's time for Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi to step down. I'm saying stand with Nancy. Earlier today, the president tweeted that. He said, I certainly hope the Democrats do not force Nancy Pelosi out. That would be very bad for the Republican Party. And by the way, please let Crying Chuck stay as well. And by the way, here's something that may shock some people. I don't want Nancy to leave, or Chuck. Stay right where you are. Here with reaction. Author of a terrific new book, Putin's Gambit. Fox business host, Lou Dobbs, our friend. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Sean. How are you doing?
You know, I think I make you laugh more than any other person in this building. That's what I think.
Well,
because
when you talk about Pelosi and you talk about keeping her, you know, we really are caught in a conundrum here. Does she stay or does she go?
Keep her.
I mean, it's a tough call.
Stand with Nancy. Stand with her.
Well, you know, here are a few thoughts about Nancy, because just for entertainment value, we all remember the, you know, pass it and we'll let you read it. But she said today, and I mean, listen to this. I am a master legislator. I am a strategic, politically astute leader, said the woman who's lost more than 60 Democratic seats in the House since she has been leader, either speaker or minority leader. It's extraordinary. She says, I respect, this is my favorite, Sean, I respect any opinion that my members have, but my decision about how long I stay is not up to them, doggone it. You got to admire her humility.
Oh, yeah, that's what I do. Did you think releasing the Trump tweeting out as he did, you think that when he said, hey, James, you know, he better not lie, there might be some taping, it's not him, I knew it wasn't him.
Yeah.
But in this, what a shot at the deep state. Because
it was.
Any of us can be surveilled, unmasked, and, you know, the Espionage Act violated and, you know, raw intelligence leaked. I thought it was a double hit by the president. Very smart, very strategic.
Absolutely, and he kept the deep state off balance throughout those weeks in which it was quite ambiguous as to whether he had or he did not have those tapes in the White House. Can I give you one more Pelosi quote as a non sequitur in this discussion? May I, Sean?
Go ahead. Do I have, like I have any control over you? Go ahead.
Well, you do indeed.